Hello, thank you for joining me today. My name is Samantha Duchesne and I'm an integrative nutrition health coach. And I have been doing a little bit of interviewing of people that I totally look up to, and people that I aspire to be like, and people that are doing things that align with my mission. My mission of spreading health and wealth and financial, economic, environmental, community security through regenerative systems. And so I'm so excited to bring on my cousin today, Janice. She runs the White Mountain Apiary in Littleton, New Hampshire. She actually just bought a farm, and here she comes. She bought a farm in Whitefield, New Hampshire, and she is just tons of bees. And we're going to hear from her today about her journey and how she's using permaculture to.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. I was just giving a little introduction to the fact that you're a beekeeper and the fact that you're a permaculture enthusiast and how you're trying to bring these principles into your life and your community. But I didn't really get that far. So I mentioned
It's funny though, because, when I studied permaculture, I began 2 years ago, everything they were saying were like a lot of things that I was already doing. I think it's because I'm like a throwback hippie from the late 60s and early 70s.
Before there was a name for it.
Before there was a name for it, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So I was just talking about how you just bought a farm in Whitefield, New Hampshire. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what that is, what it looks like, what your plans are.
It is something that my husband and I had always dreamed about, was owning a large piece of property. And I think that, that we could do with the family. And I think it comes from Paul and Alta, my grandparents. They did that same kind of thing with our family. So it's something that we really wanted to do. Just did it a little later in life, that's all.
Well, you did it for, it sounds like a long-term reason. So I think that that's super valuable.
Yeah.
And any time is better than no time. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So you keep bees.
Yeah, I do.
So let's talk about the bees for a minute. Just what scale are you at, and what does that look like?
It started when one of my daughters was living at home, came back after a car accident. She wanted some raw honey. I couldn't find any reasonably priced raw honey in the area. So she convinced us to keep bees. So we started with 2 hives, and the following year it was 4 hives, then it was 8 hives, and then, we're up to 87 to 100 hives. And,
wow.
That we keep. We go up during mid-season to probably around 170 hives because we're growing hives for other beekeepers.
I see.
Yep.
So you're selling?
We not only harvest honey and propolis and pollen, all these wonderful things from the hive that are healthy for you, but we graft queens.
Okay.
Beekeepers, and we grow the colonies for them, nucleus colonies.
Awesome. Well, I've had your honey and it's amazing.
I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, it's really good. And so you were telling me earlier that you have 2 bee yards, and then you have in Whitefield.
Yep.
And then you have 6 bee yards in other places. And could you just explain what a bee yard is and how you choose where to put them? Sure.
A bee yard is a great solar-powered, electric fenced-in area that has our hives in it. We have some at the Rocks Estate up in Bethlehem.
Okay.
That's the property is owned by the Society for the Preservation of New Hampshire Forests. So I'm very involved in educational programs up there. So I use those hives as educational tools.
Cool.
Yeah. Then we also have hives at Tarnation Flower Farm in Sugar Hill, New Hampshire, which is a great resource. The bees love it there. Tarnation Flower Farm is a great host for a bee yard there. You know, it's healthy for them with their plant production, and it's healthy for our bees. So, and then we have some at private residences, private farms.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how do you pick and choose where to put your bees? Like obviously the bees like flowers, but I'm sure there's a lot of other science behind what constitutes a healthy environment for a bee to be
Well,
in.
I want to make sure they have forage, that they
Okay.
have water source, that it's in an area that a farmer is not spraying pesticides. That's a major concern of ours. So, and it's got a good southern exposure. So
And that's so that the bees are warmer.
the bees are warmer. Yep.
And I personally don't have any experience with bees, although
We can fix
well, my ex actually kept bees a lot, and he struggled. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, was my take on it. And he was so in love with his bees, and then he would lose his bees and be so heartbroken. And
It
so,
happens though. It happens. It's nature's attrition, you know,
yeah,
and
so
the
how
bees are fighting not only the pesticides, but they're fighting a varroa mite called Varroa destructor, and it weakens the bees, so it makes them more apt to brood diseases and viruses and funguses. So, you know, we've got to stay on top of it. It's like keeping any other livestock. If your dog or cat or your cows or chickens, goats, you know, needed medical care, you would give it to them. The same thing goes with the bees. You know, people think that they can just get bees, put them in a box, leave them alone, and go back in the fall and take the honey from them. That's not true. That's not true. It's a lot more work.
yeah, I gather. So how do you help them with these struggles? Like, what do you do for the bees? What's the management practice?
The main thing is to test them, to do mite tests, and to
Okay.
keep our mite counts low. You can do that with integrated pest management methods, IPM methods, that are more hands-on, putting in frames that will grow just drones, because the mites like to go in and nest in the drones
Okay.
cells. They're larger, have a longer gestation period, so it fits with the mite schedule. You can cage your queen or move your queen and break the brood cycle. And so there's lots of things that you can do. You can use organic chemicals, the oxalic acid. I mean, oxalic acid is found in spinach and rhubarb and
Yeah.
yeah, so there's a lot, and hops. So the formic acid is also another organic acid. So
Okay.
that will help, and it won't kill your bees.
Okay.
Yep.
Fascinating. So it's how much time do you think this takes, to keep these 8 bee yards going?
It's kind of funny, that story. When I first started keeping bees, I did it for a couple of years, just those small amount of hives. And Joe said to me, you know, why don't you grow a business? There's a real need for bees here in the North Country, in the Northeast Kingdom. And there isn't anybody doing this. So why don't you grow this business, and then, because that'll take a few years, and then by the time I'm ready to retire, you know, I can help you. Well, it went from this to this overnight. So yeah, I was poor Joe because I was working full time during the week doing bees, um, and he was spending his weekends doing some heavy grunt work for me. Oh, but we're happy we did it. We love them, and he loves spending nights building bee equipment.
That's awesome. What a bonus. So, how much honey are you getting per year, like on average?
Well, it depends on the season. Last year we pulled between 35 and 50 pounds off of each hive because we leave 100 pounds on every hive for
Wow.
them.
And that's part of the sort of natural practice rather than
Yeah, you
rather
want
than
that they have
sugar water.
all the resources they need.
Yeah.
Um, Year before, we had that rainy May. It rained every single day. I know you must remember because you're an avid gardener.
Very much.
Yep. Well, because of that, our blossoms, our nectar flow really didn't start until June, till
Yeah.
everything popped. Usually the end of July, beginning of August, we have a 2 to 3 week period here in the North Country, which is it's a dearth. There's no nectar, there's no pollen until the goldenrod, the asters, the sunflowers, all of those fall forage items come out.
Hmm.
Well, because spring started so late, the spring flow, it went directly into the fall flow. So there was no break for them that 2 to 3 week period that they were eating their spring flow, their spring honey. So we had all of that honey and then add the fall honey on top of it. So that year we pulled close to 100 pounds off of every hive.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was
Wow.
crazy.
And so how many just because this is a personal experience of mine, what percentage of your hives would you say you lose every year?
Um, Prior to having a winter bee room to winter them over,
Oh.
um,
Ah,
we we would lose probably about 30%
okay.
of our hives. Um, I learned some great practices on getting our bees strong and healthy going into winter. And we put our breeder queens into the winter bee room along with some other hives now. Last year, we put 47 hives into the winter bee room and came out with 45
Wow.
that were all ready to be split. So
Wow.
we immediately had 90 hives from that room.
So that's worth it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So cool. So at the end of this, I'm obviously going to point everybody in your direction for if they want honey, if they want, to connect with you, if they want to follow you. But I'm curious sort of why you do this and how the permaculture has sort of infused your life and this project. And if you could tell me more, I know you're teaching classes on beekeeping and
Yep.
you're super knowledgeable. So could you share a little bit more about sort of the big picture of all of this for you?
Well, um, bees are pollinators, and if we didn't have them, we would not have a third of our food. And to me, that's huge. So the more that I can educate and assist other beekeepers um, to grow their own food and to keep their bees healthy, um, we're going to be able to keep more of our economy local. They're going to become more resilient and more self-sufficient. Um, they're going to become better captains of their ship. I think is an important thing to remember. I consider our land, really the earth, is our ship. Um, I work and I try not to mess it up. That's the main thing. And I want to leave it in better shape than the way I found it. So.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, Joe's just walking in. Hold on.
Oh, nice.
Being interviewed. You want to be interviewed? No.
No, that's okay.
That relationship with the earth is really important, because the growth of our plants are essential to our well-being. And if we don't have good soil and good management practices, and those plants and fungi are going to create a good neighborhood for that growth. If we don't have it, they're not going to be able to feed us. They're not going to be able to feed wildlife and other animals. And that growth also attracts insects that are essential to the plant growth, to produce pollen and nectar and fruit and vegetables. An example is if you plant valerian root underneath your apple trees, they attract a nematode that likes to eat the worms that go on our apples. So instead of spraying, you plant that valerian root underneath your apple tree, and it's taken care of. I was at a garden club meeting, and a woman said to me, I have a lot of ajuga in my front lawn, and I have to spray it every spring. This is a gardener. I have to spray it every spring to get rid of that ajuga. And I said, no, you don't. She goes, well, how am I going to take care of it and get rid of it? I said, well, personally, first of all, I love ajuga. I would love to see those purple blossoms out there, not only because they're beautiful, but they provide pollen and nectar for my bees, but because that's nature. That's the way it's supposed to be. So I said to her, try raising the pH of your soil. Mm. She goes, well, what's that going to do? I said, the ajuga won't grow. Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. So to educate people on other methods besides chemicals and pesticides is a real important to me for that reason. So,
yeah.
Water, it gets in our air, it gets, I could go on and on. How time does this have, Sammy?
Oh, as much time as you want to take. As much time.
But it's easy.
And what was resonating for me when I was hearing you sort of talk about these systems of like, we need the beneficial bacteria and the fungi, and we need these ecosystems that create support for one another. And I was just actually reading up on honey this morning because I was like, oh, I should refresh my memory. I know it's so good for us, for our health, but let's how or why? And I was reading that it's very high in prebiotics, which ironically enough helps our own intestinal flora and our microbiome thrive and become healthy. And so these healthy ecosystems support other healthy ecosystems, which support other healthy.
That's right. Yeah. Massive chain effect.
Yeah. Yeah, positive feedback loops.
It is.
So, I have so many questions. I feel like I don't even know how to frame them. But how are the bees? Can you give us a little understanding for how important bees are? I mean, I understand that they're important for producing 1/3 of our food supply, but what do they do for the flower farm that's nearby, or for the vegetable grower, or is there an interaction between the bees and the ecosystems around? How do they reinforce one another?
Sure, because when those flowers want to be pollinated, they put out a scent. They produce a scent that attracts the bees to them. This is like plant sex 101. So they want to pollinate with their sister plants, when you need that cross pollination. So they put out that scent. The bees will come to the plant. They automatically, because of their electromagnetic charges that they carry, they don't pick up the pollen from the plant. Bees are covered totally with hair. So, and they have that charge in them, and the pollen sticks to that hair. They rub it off and they put it in a basket that's on their back legs. They have 6 legs. They're 2 back legs, and you ever see a bee with those big yellow balls on the back of it, or big orange balls on the back of it? That's pollen that they're carrying back to the hive. So they scrape it off with their front legs, scrape it into their back leg, into that little basket, and carry it back. That's a protein source for the bees. It's also a protein source for us. You're going to find some of it in the honey. We happen to have hives that we collect some of the pollen off of, because we sell pollen to people that have severe allergies. They start like now to build up their resistance for the spring.
Okay. And is that applicable for like local, like, is it
ideal?
ideal?
You want local pollen. Yeah.
If you're trying to combat allergy issues.
Right. Yep.
Cool. So what are you doing with this? What classes are you teaching? What avenues are you teaching from? How are you involved in the community where you are?
Right now, I'm at the tail end of teaching Beekeeping 101, all brand new beekeepers. I offer classes throughout the season on different topics, how to split hives, how to grow new queens, how to extract your honey, once you have the extra. How to read your frames to know where your bees are at, identifying different diseases. I teach a class up at the Rocks Estate. I'm doing one March 10th. And these are for people that may want to become beekeepers, or people that just want to do something in their own yard to help the pollinators. So I'm doing that program on March 10th. So I do radio spots reminding people not to spray their dandelions in the spring. We're a little more urban area in Littleton. People like to have those lush lawns because that is their first food source. And the bees need it after being, in the hive for 5 months. They need that.
The dandelion is their first food source.
Yeah.
Of course. It's so early.
Crocuses, dandelions, pussy willows. Those are all real important items for them.
Awesome. So did you all hear that? Don't spray your dandelions.
Don't spray those dandelions. When I teach the 2nd and 3rd and 4th graders at the schools, I tell them that. I explain it to them. I said, can you imagine going 5 months, not being outside and playing, and you want to get out there to, get that food? It's like waiting for the ice cream man.
Yeah, and we have to wait 5 months for that around here.
Waiting for the ice cream man. So can you imagine going out there and somebody took all the ice cream? It's gone. They need it. And it hits home with them because I make it relatable to them. And I've had parents call me and say, my child is crying because we're talking about mowing the lawn.
That's so sweet.
Them.
That's awesome. So where are you teaching these classes from? If people are interested in learning about how they can be involved, is there a way?
They can contact me directly. We have whitemountainapiary.com. They can go on the page. But I see a bunch of people that are joining, and some of them from back in Connecticut when I lived in Connecticut, which is cool.
That's exciting.
It is. Um, I really wanted to touch on the 12 permaculture points, if I
Please.
can. Yeah. Um, the first point is observe and interact. In observing nature, it's important to look at all those different perspectives and how they work together, uh, and what's going on with all of those elements together as a whole. Um, the proverb, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, is a good analogy for it. It reminds us of the place that our own values on what we observe. And yet in nature, there's no right or wrong. It is what it is. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the way it is. I tell new beekeepers the best thing that you can do to learn about your colony is to get a nice Adirondack chair, park it near the front, but on the side of your hive, so you don't want to be in their flight pattern, and just watch them go in and out the front door. Because as soon as things are different or wrong in that hive, you're going to notice it right away, just by the way that they are reacting, going in and out of the hive. So that's important to do that, not only with the bees, but with everything. The second one is to catch and store energy. So we've developed systems in our lives that collect resources. You know, we've got different battery systems, we've got different solar cells, we've got water dams, you know, that provide energy. And those are great, and they're abundant when you're using them. But you need to remember that you can't use that all at once. You need to be able to store that to make sure there's some there when it's needed. And like I said, we leave 100 pounds of honey and we leave frames of pollen in those hives for the winter. And that's their resource for them to exist through the winter. Examples for people would be, you know, in the spring to cut your wood and get it stacked for next winter. Mm-hmm. Or to collect rainwater for you or for your garden. Mm-hmm. Because in the middle of the summer, you know, when we have those dry spells, you want to be able to have that water available to you, because that's your food you're growing. You can also apply that to your personal energy, which I think is really important. When you look at something, you go, where is that leading me at this moment? Where is that bringing me to best achieve the goals that I want to get to, or the place I want to be at in my life? Whether you're, you know, you have to learn, sometimes you have to learn to say no. So, and that's probably harder than saying yes. So, the third one is obtain a yield. You know, you can do this really easy with your garden. You get those rewards when you go out and you pick that first zucchini of the season, or that first tomato, especially if you can get it before the 1st of July. You know, that's awesome. But you want to be able to also apply that to your personal life, your time management. Time is a huge yield for us. Our time is very valuable. So even if you can find simple ways, like having your Instagram feed posted automatically to your Facebook feed so you don't have to do everything twice, or have your QuickBooks download your bank statement, or, you know, those little things that are going to save you time and help you obtain that yield, that goal you want to be at. So, the toughest one, I think, for people to do is apply self-regulation and accept feedback. You know, open your mind and open your heart to constructive criticism. It's really important. And I think it's important when you are going through a difficult time personally to be able to take that step back, have somebody tell you what they see from their perspective, and accept that willingly. God, I wish I had known that 40 years ago. My life would have been so different. But having that ability provides us with the information on the effects of what we're doing and to help us make better decisions. I should say better choices. Decisions, I believe, are something that you're killing off an option. This is my 1970s-esque coming out. You know, the word decide is a derivative of like homicide, suicide. You're killing one of your options off. You know, you're deciding one thing or another. But if you make it a choice, it is, that's what's good for you at that moment. And that's what works for you at that moment. And you get down that road and it isn't working, then it's okay to just move in the other direction because you haven't killed off that other option.
Right.
It's been a choice instead of a decision. So you can use that fundamental to maintain our limits and our relationships and with our surroundings, our family, our friends, and our homesteads. So it's okay. Use and value renewable resources and services. That's not just for, you know, burn the wood that's on your land, you know, but it's also means picking the right tree to cut. So, you know, you may want to take care of a tree that's got a huge canopy on it that's choking out other trees. So now you've taken out that big canopy and you have all these other trees just flourishing because of it. So you've made that that choice and that to value what's underneath that canopy, not just that one tree. But also for our financial lives, learn to live off your income, not your savings, and avoid debt. So it will help you in the long run. Honor your limits. Yeah, it's huge.
I don't want to interrupt you for too long, but I'm feeling like all of these things are so aligned and are so applicable in all parts of life.
Absolutely.
Like natural ecosystems have their own sets of limits and things have growing like capacities and that happens on a cellular level in our bodies. And I mean, that's what cancer is. It's when our cellular intelligence isn't there. And so the natural limitations that are supposed to be enacted on a cellular level in our body aren't happening because communication isn't there. And then all of a sudden you have this disease. And I think the same thing happens in an unhealthy environment or an unhealthy soil. So that's where my mind is going when you're talking about all of this. It's so beautiful. So thank you and keep going.
You're welcome. Well, and now you've got me thinking about, okay, all of this working together. You know, most people think that trees are just planted in the ground and their root system goes down. A lot of people don't know that aspens are really one tree. They have a root system that encompasses all of it, all of the aspen in the area. And it's one tree. They send up those shoots, but it's one tree, one root system. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating because actually my friend Ashley just joined, but she's a friend of mine from Colorado. And where we lived in Colorado, there was an aspen grove that was the largest organism in the world.
Yeah.
Um, and it was up high. It was on the top of, I'm going to forget the name of the pass, but it was above Crested Butte. And it was the largest organism in the world at the time. And it was just fascinating to learn that as an environmental studies major and somebody really like passionate about sustainability. To look around and see all of these trees and they were all one was
Well, they were all one. And that's a great correlation to the way our bees work, because they work as one organism. They don't work individually. They all work towards the betterment of the colony as one. Keebler Pass. She just
thank you, Ashley. I knew she would know.
Whip it right off. I was thinking rabbit ears, but I'm thinking no, rabbit ears doesn't have all the aspen. So
so fascinating. Man, we have so much to learn.
You know, it's amazing. It's amazing. I'm going to go on now.
Yeah, go on.
Stay on. I'm on number 6.
Okay.
Produce no waste. You know, composting is a great way to produce no waste. But don't waste your efforts either. You know, when you have to look at things the way they are and be able to ascertain that, okay, I am not going to spend any more energy on that, because your energy is valuable and you don't want to waste that either. You don't want to have it drain you. You want to use your energy the best way you can, figure out the best way to use it. This is exactly what the bees do. The exact same thing. If we could all be like bees, our world would be amazing. Just amazing. A worm is probably one of the most effective recyclers of organic material. I mean, and nothing goes to waste with them.
And they do so much for their surrounding environment too.
Yep. You also have to remember, like the proverb, a stitch in time saves 9, waste not, want not, those kind of proverbs. That reminds us is that it's really easy to be wasteful during times of abundance. So, but the waste can be a cause of hardship later. So you really need to remember that. And I was kind of bummed, but I was really, really happy when people started doing victory gardens, and you couldn't find canning jars last year.
Yeah.
Or seeds. I mean, the seeds have blown out this year really fast. So people are thinking of this and growing their own and storing their own and not having the waste. The waste that is made from restaurants and grocery stores, you know, commercial places, is incredible. It's just mind-boggling the amount of food that the U.S. wastes.
Ugh.
So, yeah. It bothers me. We have a program up in Lancaster. The Root Cellar does it. And they basically take any extra growth or waste items from farmers and bakeries, and they pick it up and they distribute it. So none of it goes to waste. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds through our growing season that they do.
That's awesome.
A great program. Design from patterns to details. Observe patterns of your sun, your wind, your rain, your topography. rather than trying to work against them. Make them work for you.
Mm-hmm.
That works real well. So when we take a step back and we observe those patterns in nature and society, these can form the backbone of our design. This is it. And the rest can be filled in as we go. And you can kind of equate it to a spider web. You know, they do those main lines and then they fill in everything afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that kind of.
Have you heard of the pattern language?
Yes. Yes.
It's an amazing book for any of you out there listening. It's all about how to take the concept of design in three-dimensional form, like in architecture, but also in communities and cities, and use certain patterns to define the way we build our environment and how that built environment affects the patterns of thought and the patterns of relationship and the patterns of the natural world. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's like if you lived in if you had a really wet soil, you know, the detail of your property. Don't try to fill it in and grow crops that aren't water tolerant.
Right.
That's just not going to happen. So you've got to find that niche, or you want to farm, but you have thick woods. You have like a huge sugar maple grove, and you don't want to cut your sugar maples down because they're providing a resource for you and an avenue for you for a financial avenue for you. So take some of the branches that have fallen and grow mushrooms underneath those maple leaves.
Yeah.
I mean, the maple is perfect for growing mushrooms on. You know, do a log farm. So
especially in a wet environment.
In a wet environment, yeah. So just be aware of those patterns. You know, it's going to be, you wouldn't grow sunflowers in a sugar maple grove. You know, you have to be realistic about all of it. So you have to observe those patterns and see what's going to work. Mm-hmm. And you also want to use those patterns to minimize water demands, get nature to do your heating, your cooling. But this also applies within an organization or your socialization. What are each individual's patterns? You know, how does that work in relationship? How can you best work with them or live with them? By those patterns. So
rather than trying to change them.
Rather than trying to change them. Yep. Yeah. Integrate rather than segregate. Integration allows you to complement each other, support each other. By putting things in the right place, relationships are just going to grow and develop and support each other more and more and more. An example would be a group of people standing in a circle, holding hands. They're putting the right things in the right place. Their relationships develop. But the best part is what's in the center space of those people together. What all comes together because of it. I don't know if that made sense to you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because of that, each individual being integrated, something greater than them.
They bring something to it. Yep. Yeah. They all bring something to it. Use small and slow solutions. Where our life is right now, and our economy has real opportunities. And I can equate that to friends that have homesteads and farms. myself with our bees. We had to make some solutions to problems that came up with COVID. I couldn't do in-person classes anymore. I can still have people come by the house to pick up honey, although we sell in 16 stores now. So that's, yeah. So I was able to already have some wholesale experience working with a few stores locally, and had that in place. So when COVID hit, we were able to take our retail outlets, which was a lot of fairs and farmers markets, places like that, and shift that into the wholesale market so we weren't stuck. So we had to scale back the retail. I could have people come to the house, but they had to do like curbside pickup.
Right.
You know, I couldn't have them come in and see the honey being poured into their jar and to have that experience part of it. But we're working around that. But you find those solutions by starting small, and you can see the wisdom of making that solution larger. You know, don't jump into stuff full force. Don't put your eggs all in one basket. That's basically what it is. Value diversity and use it. Diversity reduces your vulnerability to a variety of threats. It takes advantage of the unique nature of the environment that it's in. A basic characteristic to any sustainable system represents resilience. If one initiative or technique doesn't work in addressing a problem, another may. You haven't failed.
Yeah.
I have beekeepers that they'll call me and they'll say, my hive swarmed. And most people that teach beekeeping will say, that's great. And they'll say, well, what's so great about it? That means you had a really healthy hive that grew to the point that they needed to divide.
Yeah.
That is their purpose on earth, is to grow and divide, multiply and divide. And so you did a great job. Now go catch it.
Yeah.
But that's also, we can equate that same vulnerability to our own lives, not just our bees. Try things and experiment and see what works for you. Even if it's a complex problem. Again, use the small and slow solutions, but don't be adverse to trying different methods. And I notice it with our bees, our apple blossoms. Apple blossoms come out, they're just opening up. Our honeybees aren't in them. Big bumblebees are in them. The native bumbles are in them. They have a longer tongue to be able to get into the center of that blossom before it's fully opened. So a week before our honeybees hit those apple blossoms, those bumbles are on it. And then the week after our honeybees are done, the green sweat bees are on it. So that blossom has provided pollen and nectar to different varieties at different times. Hummingbirds, is a great example, because they have that long beak and they can get into areas that other birds can't. So you'll see them at items first. And that symbolizes the specialization of the form and function of our nature. You know, it happens all along, and it's a continual cycle. Takes care of all those variations. 2 more. Don't be bored.
I am so not bored.
Edges. The edges of our environment. This is the most robust area of growth, is on those edges. It can also be equated to represent ideas coming together. Maybe 2 totally separate ideas, but they're coming together and they have that edge. So value that edge. That's real important. The greatest social innovation that we can value is the exchange of ideas and harness those. They reflect our diversity. I envision the sun coming over the horizon with a river in the foreground. Now you see all of these edges, okay? The proverb, don't think you're on the right track just because it's the well-beaten path, comes to mind. And just remember that the most popular is not always the best approach. You know, you have to do what works for you in your environment. And that brings it to the best part. Creatively use and respond to change. We can have such a positive effect on so many things by observing and intervening at the right time. What comes to mind to me is, you know, you can give a man a fish to eat, or you can teach him how to fish. You know, so be creative on how you approach a situation. And the transformation of what happens in nature is the same. I mean, we grow queens, and I can put out a starter hive, and I can force them to grow racks of queen cells. And watch them all transform, and watch those queens take other bees and start growing their own colonies. It's just such a transformation to see. And it's totally different than the other life that they may or may not have had.
Right.
We can do that for ourselves also. Given how dynamic living systems are and how we are as humans, it's unavoidable that changes and problems may arise, good or bad. But as they do arise, turn them into your advantage instead of the dark cloud over your head. Drawing on your own personal and organizational assets to address them. Consider how what's going on is going to help you lead to a greater security, resilience, and self-sufficiency. Is it going to bring you to that end, to that goal? I think tying all of these together, one thing I'd like to lastly mention is nature ties us all together. We need to practice gratefulness and be humble to our earth. for the magic to happen. You know, I say this, but I get goosebumps. I mean, it does bring you to a place that you can say, okay, so this happened, but that's okay because now this is going to bring me in this path.
Mm-hmm.
And accept that and be grateful to it, whether it's your earth community or in your personal life. It all works out. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's a saying, it's all going to be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Right. Exactly. So that's my take on life and my bees.
Thank you so much for sharing. What an awesome conversation. And you're so full of wisdom and insight and, my goodness, knowledge.
Well, that's because I'm the same generation as your mom.
Is that what happens?
I'm one of the 22.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, Jenna, did you just see what Jenna wrote? Ain't it great? You're right, Jenna.
So where can people find you? Will you just repeat that one more time?
Yeah, White Mountain Apiary, all spelled out. And apiary is not about birds. It's about bees. It's APIARY. People get that confused. So
perfect. Awesome. Well, I hope to continue this conversation.
Oh, we definitely have to.
Because we could go on for days. So thank you so much.
You're welcome to come over anytime. I'll suit you up.
I would love to.
Yeah.
I definitely need to get honey. So that's on my list.
All right.
All right. So nice talking with you. Thanks everyone for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.